Over the weekend, there were some rumors circulating about how the Houston Texans and former Cleveland Browns running back Nick Chubb had mutual interests. I'll say this about Nick Chubb. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the NFL since the start of 2010. This is a guy who, over the course of his career, has, I believe, more yards after contact than maybe anybody but Derrick Henry, and might even have more than him. This is a guy who, over the course of his career, has averaged 5.1 yards per carry. I like him a lot as a player. The fact that he was as good of a running back as he was in Cleveland, with all that Cleveland generally goes through, is truly incredible. He had 1,494 yards in 2019. He had 1,525 in 2022. Hell of a player. One of the best running backs, again, that we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years. And I really do think that his ability to break tackles is second to almost none. That said, important things to remember about Nick Chubb, because I'm seeing people online do exactly what they do so much, and it makes this fan base seem so damn basic from time to time. They're looking at the name and they are assuming that the name means this player is still the same. But Nick Chubb's been through some bleep over the last couple of years. I'm not talking about off the field stuff. I'm talking about in 2023, week 2, he re-injured a knee that he had injured in 2015 at Georgia. It looked ugly. I think we all saw it. Torn MCL, damaged ACL. He began last year, since it happened early on in the 2023 season, on the PUP list. He played starting in week 7. He scored a rushing touchdown, but ultimately he broke his foot later in the year and had what was, at least in terms of yards per carry average, his worst season. He averaged 3.3 yards a carry last year. I like that the Texans are giving him a phone call, that they're going to give him a tryout. And if he passes his physical, awesome. But I'm not expecting this guy to do anything for the Texans this season. And there are times where I perhaps take a look at the discourse online surrounding a player and I get annoyed by it, without being fair and without saying, hey, this is not an entirely accurate reflection of how the whole fan base feels. But here's how you should feel about Nick Chubb. Hey, the Texans have Nick Chubb. Let's see if he makes the team. Anything after that, it's secondary at this point in time. Nick Chubb, the Texans are bringing him in. What does that mean for Dameon Pierce? Again, he's got to make the team. I'm not just talking about in the next couple of days when he has to pass a physical. I mean, he's got to make the team by the end of training camp. I do not think that's a lock. I would bet on Dameon Pierce to make the team over Nick Chubb to make the team at this moment in time. It's a great name. He's a great player, but I think there's a lot of reasons for skepticism, and I am amused by the excitement. Look, the Texans running game's going to look like with Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. Is this the best running back tandem in the NFL? 2 years ago, yeah. Yeah, it would have been. That's not what Nick Chubb is right now. I hope he proves me wrong. I really do. This is one of the more humble players in the league. This is the guy who clearly loved his time in Cleveland. He had that Players Tribune article that he wrote to Browns fans that got released in 2024. I thought it was awesome. I think everyone across the league loves Nick Chubb. So I hope he shuts me up, but let's pump the brakes. The guy's got to pass a physical. He broke his foot last year. Foot injuries are very difficult to come back from. And he also has had a knee injury on the same knee multiple times over a 10-year period. Just saying, cool the Jets down a little bit. bit, okay? Tuck it in the waistband. You seem like you've taken a rise or two, you know? RIIZE. Health.com, promo code 975 for 20% off the Reds Max strips, Sean Mapes.
Yeah, like I too, like, you can be optimistic. Like, let's just say Nick Chubb makes the team and like is the backup running back, is like a lesser version of some lesser version of what he was in Cleveland. It still would be it'd be a sign of something bad happening if he plays a major part in this
Yeah.
Texans offense, considering I just pulled up last year's rushing stats. Uh, Joe Mixon, 245 rushes. Next highest running back was Dameon Pierce at 40, tied with Cam Akers, also at 40. So it's such a huge drop off for what the backup running back is going to be asked to do. And maybe there's a little bit more because it's Nick Chubb and because it's, not Cam Akers and Dameon Pierce. Like, maybe there's an increased role for the backup running back this season. But at the same time, when Joe Mixon was in Cincinnati, it was the Joe Mixon show. It was Joe Mixon was all three downs. He was out there for the Bengals, and that's the same thing that happened with the Texans. So, like, even if you fast forward to Joe Mixon or Nick Chubb is on this team backing up Joe Mixon, it's like that's still historically a pretty small role.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, Mixon last season, that he was able to do anything behind that offensive line is a credit to Mixon. And he kept on crediting the offensive line in front of him. But if you've watched the film, Mixon was making all of that stuff happen on his own. And while Chubb's good at breaking tackles, what can Chubb do? This is an offensive line that is pressing the reset button. And I guess it can't be any worse than it was last year. But I'm looking at Chubb. It's a cool name. I wish him the best. I'm not expecting anything out of him. And I still think that Dameon Pierce has a bigger role on this team than Chubb at this moment in time. I think Pierce is very talented. Pierce, like Nick Chubb, great at breaking tackles. I do not understand why Bobby Slowick was not able to figure out a way to use him over the last two seasons, given what we saw out of Dameon Pierce with Davis Mills as quarterback and Pep Hamilton as offensive coordinator. We've seen that guy be successful at the NFL level. And now that Bobby Slowick's gone, I mean, maybe it was Bobby Slowick's fault as opposed to Dameon Pierce's fault. I think there's a lot of disrespect towards Dameon Pierce. And honestly, I feel like it's crap. I think you haven't watched the guy play if you think he's not good. I mean, the guy has natural put the ball in his hands. He's going to make people miss. He's going to run through people skills. Not a lot of ball carriers have what Dameon Pierce brings to the table. He might not be a scheme fit here, but I will expect more out of Pierce than I'll expect out of Nick Chubb. You should feel the same way on that front. It is cool to see Chubb as a Houston Texan, but pump the brakes a little bit here. Someone texted in, most interactive sports talk show in town, from the 832. How about Jaire Alexander? That is a cornerback that the Packers are either on the verge of cutting or potentially trading. Alexander is intriguing, but I am not trading for Jaire Alexander. I'm assuming at this moment in time you wouldn't have to give up much to get Jaire Alexander. And we do know that because we know he's going to get released apparently soon. The CEO of the Packers, Mark Murphy, said, like, yeah, well, we've played without him a lot. It was a weird, shady comment that he threw at Alexander, who has been a good player in the past. I definitely like taking a flyer on him as the backup cornerback or someone for depth. But this is what Mark Murphy, Packers, is he CEO? Is he president? Um, he's in his final days as president of the Packers. And when asked about Jaire Alexander, saying that he's on his way out, he's been a great player for us. Obviously, elite talent. Unfortunately, just injured a lot. Unfortunately, that's a big part of the game. We've been used to playing without Jaire Alexander. That last part, yikes. And he has missed 34 games over the last 4 years. So that is something to keep in mind. I'm definitely willing to pick up the phone on Alexander. I don't think there's that much of a difference between he and Nick Chubb as far as realistic expectations for this coming season, especially given the depth situation, which Sean laid out. Hey, if Joe Mixon's ahead of Nick Chubb, how many carries is he going to get? If Jaire Alexander, is he going to want to play on a team that's got Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter as the one and the two corners? He's 28 years old. I'm sure he's going to think to himself, I'm going to go somewhere where I have the opportunity to play and earn myself another big payday as a corner.